Good morning. I can't think of a better place to be, our sweeter faces to look at. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. And Zoom friends, we're glad you're here too. Yeah, wave, bye. My name is Jean Devaney. I use the pronoun she, her, an elder wearing a Side with Love t-shirt today in bright yellow. I am this morning's worship associate. All the information that you need to know about today's service can be found in this handy guide to Sunday worship. And so the greeters out in the hall, hey David, if you need one of these, please put your hand up and one of the greeters will bring you one. There's a couple over here. He's darting out in the hall to get them. All right, so hands up over here. There's a few over here. So David will distribute those. Zoom friends, our tech team is going to drop a copy of the order of service and a visitor form on the chat, so look for that there. All right, over here. Thank you, David. And now let us enter a time of worship by lighting the flaming chalice, which is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. I will be lighting the chalice as Poppy Lockridge shares these words from Sharon Wiley.
You whose hearts are broken, come in. You whom pain has touched, and sorrow and shock. You who have cried this week and read the news with sadness. You whom loss has shadowed, you whom grieve. Come in, come in. You with hearts open to joy and hope, come in. You whom love has touched, and friendship and wonder. You who have laughed this week and felt gratitude for life's many blessings. You to whom gifts are given in abundance. You who rejoice. Come in, come in. All of our hearts are broken and open. All of us here grieve and rejoice. This is our place and this our hour to gather and sing and cry and yes, laugh. Come in, let us worship together.
Is it on? Good morning, everyone. My name is Youngsun Ryu, and I'm the minister serving this congregation. I'm also the person telling the Time for All Ages story. So if all of the young ones could come up and grab a carpet square and have a seat up here, I'm going to tell you a story that you probably already know, because I think that maybe you learned it already in one of your classes. And this is a story that comes out of the Christian Bible, and it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. So one day, hello there, come on in. By the way, Ryan Doppelmayr, who's the one who usually tells the story, is in Colorado enjoying lovely snow-filled days. So we will welcome her back when she gets back. So one day, Jesus is talking to this guy who some people call a lawyer. He's a person who knows the law. And so they're having this kind of intense conversation. And the law guy asked Jesus, do you know what the law is? What does the law say? And Jesus says, well, what do you say it says? And the lawyer says, well, it says, love God with all your heart and mind, and love your neighbors as yourself. And Jesus said, yeah, that's right. And the lawyer says, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? And so Jesus, instead of answering the question, like straightforward, he tells this story. He tells the story about a person who is walking, traveling from one city to another. And along the path, someone robs him, takes all of his clothes and takes all of his stuff and beats him up and leaves him lying on the side of the road. And it just so happens that a priest comes along and is walking along and finds this person at the side of the road. But you know what he does? He just crosses the road to the other side and ignores him. And then some more time goes by, and another kind of priest comes along, a holy person, comes along and sees this person bleeding and badly beat up, and he also crosses the road and ignores him. And then, finally, a stranger to the town, someone who didn't live there at all, came and saw this person. We call this person the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, because he actually stopped and picked up this person and put him on a donkey and helped him to a nearby inn. You know what an inn is? It's like a hotel, yeah. And put him there and gave the innkeeper some money and said, will you please take care of him? I've got to go take care of some business, but I'll be back in a few days. Whatever expenses that he builds up while he's staying here, I'll pay it all. And then Jesus turns to the lawyer and says, who do you think was the good neighbor? Who do you think was the good neighbor? The priest, the other holy man, or the Good Samaritan?
The beast.
The Good Samaritan, the one who stopped and helped, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, the one who picked him up and put him on the donkey, the Good Samaritan. So, when we love our neighbors as much as we even love ourselves, or as much as we love our families, that means that we can also be a good Samaritan. We can be a good person too, right? All right. It was great spending time with you all. I think you're going to do some really fun things today. Yes. So you can follow your teachers out. And if today's your first time with us, please bring your grown-up with you so they can meet with the teachers. And we're going to sing our favorite song while you go. Here we have gathered side by side and heart to heart. Here we have gathered after a week of tears, a week of frustration, a week of confusion, a week of so many different kinds of feelings. Here we have gathered because we need one another. We long to be with each other, especially today and in the days and the weeks and the months ahead. We need each other. We already knew that, didn't we? We know it so much more now. On Wednesday evening, we gathered with the larger UU community, UUs from all around the country. And then yesterday afternoon, we spent 3 hours here, gathered, just to express our feelings, express our thoughts, and to put them out in a space that is completely accepting and completely embracing. This is what we do as a community, right? We open our hearts and we open the doors, and then we invite everyone to come in. And so this morning, I want to invite any expression that you want to give in terms of how you're feeling today. And maybe we could limit it to one word. Yeah, but if you haven't had a chance this week to just express yourself, now is the time to do it within this community that cares so much about radical hospitality, radical welcome, radical inclusion. What are your feelings? How have you been this week?
Depressed.
Depressed, absolutely. Resolved. Afraid. Stoic. Tired. Surprised. Grieving. Horrified. Horror. Hopeful. You're still hopeful too. Someone said deceived. I also want to remind us that even if you can't see them, Ember, our ministerial intern, is with us today. Hi, Ember. And Ember is serving as Zoom chaplain. Ember, do you have anybody on Zoom who would like to share some of their one-word feelings? And while we're waiting for Ember, more words? We will get through this. We will get through this. Yes, we will. Yes. Disappointed. Many of us are disappointed. Devastated. Curious, concerned, furious.
I'm curious too.
Embarrassed.
Angry.
Angry.
The F word.
The F word. Flowers, yes.
Flowers.
Numb. Determined. I think we have Ember. Yes?
Frustrated, grace, anxious,
Confused. Committed.
perplexed,
Ready to cause some good trouble. Do we?
grateful.
Is that Ember?
It is Ember. I don't know how well you can hear me.
Can you do? Go ahead, Ember.
Trying again. Can you hear me?
It's very low.
Okay. I have frustrated, grace, anxious, perplexed, grateful, depressed, and dance.
Thank you. Thank you, Ember. Any final thoughts in the room here? Here now.
Persistent.
Persistent. Resistance.
Resilient.
Resilient. Undaunted. awake, realization. I want to do something. Courage. Protective. Connected. Aware. Yeah. I know that we have a very diverse community, and so I know that not everyone voted for the exact same person. And yet, we are a Unitarian, Universalist, spiritual community, and that means that we are bound by covenants. We are bound by promises that we make to each other to create a space of belonging for everyone. We have made a commitment to create beloved community here. We've also committed to being a sanctuary. This week, the UUA president, the Reverend Sophia Betancourt, reminded us of our essential nature as congregations. We are a sanctuary people, she said to us. Whether Harbor or Pink Haven, our homes, our churches, our fellowships model what it means to offer solidarity, shelter, and asylum in the face of what many of us cannot begin to imagine. And so today, we are lifting up one of our many ministries, one of our many responses to the things that threaten us, threaten our loved ones. UUCE is part of the Refugee Resettlement Coalition of Lane County. And as one of its community partners, UUCE is dedicated to educating ourselves and cultivating a deeper understanding, a more compassionate understanding of those seeking solidarity, shelter, and asylum. And today, I'm very, very happy to welcome 4 of our members who are going to share their experiences and their thoughts about deep hospitality and how we can prepare to respond to threats against ourselves and our neighbors. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for participating and helping create this worship service.
Kindness by Naomi Shahib Nye. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. So you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop, and the passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake with sorrow, you must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is you I have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
This is grief. This is grief. Because grief doesn't just apply to losing a loved one, but we also grieve when we expected something to happen and it didn't. We grieve for our ancestors and their hopes for us, the things that they built for us and handed down that have been lost. We grieve for the future, for our children and our children's children. We are grieving now. It's very, very important for us to acknowledge that these are true feelings. I've heard a little bit of dismissal, like, "Oh, get over it, this is just an election." And that's so unkind. It's so unkind. You would never say that to someone who has lost their loved one. This is grieving. And so let us be with each other in our grieving. This is the time in our service where you can get up if you want to and make your way to one of 3 joys and sorrows tables where you can light a candle or place a stone in water. And Zoom friends, you've got Chaplain Ember there, and you can write your joys and sorrows into the chat if you want them to be shared out loud. We'll do that later. And if you choose not to get up, please remain seated. Open your hearts of compassion and just send out that love to everyone in this room and beyond.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Scanlon, she, her, wearing a Protect the Earth frog on a green shirt. I'm a 66 almost, round, short, wild woman, sharing my poem, Radical Hospitality. Radical hospitality is when you share, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't have much, even when you have a lot, especially when you have a lot, because others have less than enough, and often too much pain, needing safe harbor, needing a place and people to help them through the darkness. Be the light. Be they climate refugees, foster children, aged, disabled, used and abused, broken by life. Be the refuge. Show up in whatever way you can. Be radical. Go out of your comfort zone. Harder times are ahead. We may all need radical hospitality at some point. Set a place at the table, make a bed on the couch. A wave is coming of those needing radical hospitality.
Good morning. I'm Charlotte Ryder. I'm a plump octogenarian with freckles and like to believe there's still a bit of red in my gray hair. I use the pronoun she, her. Today I'm wearing a vintage parsley turquoise and black shirt and black vest. I'm wearing copper-colored eyeglasses. I've been a UU since 1964 and a member of this church since 1996. I have experienced radical hospitality in my own life in very unexpected ways. 50 years ago, I found myself isolated in a rural community in a very difficult marriage. I retreated to my former community with 3 children, a dog, and a bottle of Maalox. My dear friends, not well off themselves, welcomed me into their home for a month while I got my feet under me. Another friend loaned me a car for a year. This enabled me to get a job, to get housing. None of this would have happened without that first helping hand. Several women friends and I had a $100 slush fund that passed from person to person. No one remembers who started it, but we all benefited from it. In 2 years, due to all the help, I was able to buy my own home. I could never repay them, but I have passed it on. I have hosted folks in my own home for periods of time while they recovered from misfortune or ill health. In 2008, I retired from work to care for my beloved Phil, who had advancing dementia. 2 hours after I retired, I broke my left leg, making me unable to help Phil with all of his activities of daily living. My neighbors and this church sprung into action, providing immediate assistance with meals and supervision of Phil. The church descended like an efficient SWAT team. Someone showed up, I kid you not, that was a SWAT team, manned by some people who are still here today. Someone showed up, started a phone tree, and I had folks scheduled to stay over 24 hours a day until my family, who lived many miles away, could rearrange their lives for the 8 weeks it would take for me to recover. Streams of casseroles arrived. Some folks in this congregation are still here today, and I remember all your faces and all of the time you spent. And that's a shout out to Brian Lewis in Kalamazoo, who was incredibly helpful. I felt very loved and cared for in that moment. A week later, members of my family arrived and took over. I will always be forever grateful for that timely help. On a larger scale, we have folks in our community who have given up their Airbnbs to house Ukrainians escaping wars. Centro Latino helps new immigrants adjust to the community. Churches support homeless families by donating food and clothing. Many churches host tiny houses or Conestoga huts for homeless individuals. Homeless folks get help through many programs of St. Vincent de Paul. When we remove hopelessness, we invite in opportunity and the possibility of a better life. If we could eliminate dictators, it could be the key to world peace.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Hohenemser. I'm a very senior citizen of this congregation. I have short silver gray hair. I'm wearing black pants and a multicolored sweater. I was born in Germany in 1935, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the concept of the Kindertransport, an incredible program that started at the outbreak of the Second World War. The German word means transportation of children. And to me, it's an excellent example of radical hospitality. The Kindertransport program was begun by the British government in response to the virulent anti-Semitism in Germany in the late 1930s, particularly after the events of Kristallnacht on November 8th, 1938. During this night of terror, the Nazis pillaged and looted Jewish homes, burned down over 100 synagogues, and sent over 30,000 Jews to concentration camps. Horrified by these events, the English government did not stand idly by. Over the next 9 months, more than 10,000 Jewish children were sent to England for safety. My 2 older brothers, Dick and Joe, ages 11 and 9 respectively, were among them. I was only 3.5 at the time, so my parents opted to keep me with them. It was not possible for my brothers to stay with just one family, so they were separated and sent to 2 different families who opened their homes to them for the next 1.5 years. In this time of grave uncertainty and fear, it is amazing to me that they found space in their hearts and their homes to welcome and shelter my brothers. Indeed, my brothers thrived in Britain. They attended good schools, learned to speak English, and forged a lifelong connection to their host families. When the war started and storm clouds spread to England, my parents felt that it was no longer fair for these 2 families to shoulder the responsibility not only for their own children, but for my brothers as well. My parents therefore made the very risky decision to have them sail across the Atlantic and join the 3 of us. The joy we felt at being reunited was immeasurable. Our family was very lucky, despite the separation and the fear that accompanied. Many of the children who were saved by the transport program never saw their families again. I have always felt an enormous sense of gratitude for these 2 families. For me, the Kinder Transport Program will forever stand out as a magnificent example of kindness and radical hospitality. Thank you.
This has been a work in progress. My name is Judy Shaw. I am a 68-year-old woman wearing a vest of Guatemalan fabrics that no self-respecting Guatemalan would ever wear. Okay, and my pronouns are she and her. I am a member of the Refugee Sanctuary Committee, and I'm here today to follow the advice of David French, a New York Times columnist I don't normally agree with. After Tuesday, though, his short and sweet advice for living through the next 4 years spoke to me. Protect the vulnerable and speak the truth. This is actually more about just arriving back from Mexico last night. I'm a little tired. Okay, some of the most vulnerable people I know are immigrants and refugees, and a dose of radical hospitality seems like a really good place to start. Today I'd like to share some facts with you about refugees and immigrants and tell a short story of some I know. The labels themselves are a good place to start. Refugees, political asylum applicants, and immigrants. According to the latest figures from the UN High Commissioner on Refugees, there are 43.7 million refugees in the world, a number that has more than doubled over the last 10 years. The term refugee has a legal meaning. That is, refugees by definition have been forced to flee their countries because of persecution, war, or violence, and multiple intensive screenings have determined that they have a well-founded fear of persecution for 5 specific reasons: reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. This is a key point. It's a tall order to be designated a refugee. If fear is because there's a lot of political unrest or gang violence, but they are not individually targeted, they're not likely to qualify as a refugee. Offering hospitality to refugees can be challenging and satisfying in equal measure. I'm thinking back about 30 years ago to a group of refugee women in an ESL class, and the topic of the day was family. Everybody's got a family, right? Well, first of all, the brand new ESL teacher, me, didn't think through how complex the students' family structures could be. Right off, the East African women wondered where to put their name of their second, third, or fourth mother to account for their father's other wives. Oops. Then a woman from Laos talked about her family. She entered her parents' and siblings' names on the lines provided and said shortly that they had all been killed by Vietnamese soldiers. She shot an angry look at the Vietnamese students in the room, not knowing or maybe disregarding that they were not North Vietnamese and had likely been on the same side as her family. Now, the Vietnamese women expressed their discomfort in high-pitched laughter. In turn, the East African women were outraged that the Vietnamese women would laugh at such a terrible thing. Well, it was bedlam. And when I finally gathered my wits, the lesson was able to morph into one on feelings, feeling words, and on trying to resolve disagreements and misunderstandings with words. One of the students suggested they were here in the US because people did not resolve their differences peaceably. Hospitality can be awkward, overwhelming, and heartwarming. So another thing to know about refugees is when they are settled in the US, their status as a refugee is determined even before they get here. My Laos student had lived for years in a Thai refugee camp. And then they undergo screening by international and American authorities. In fact, refugees are the most thoroughly vetted of any immigrant class and the best supported by our government. They get financial benefits, health care, and the coveted work permit when they arrive. And now, someone applying for political asylum, they have to meet the same standard as a refugee. They have to prove that they are personally at risk, not just that they are afraid to return home. The difference between a political asylum applicant and a refugee is the asylum applicant is already here, and they're asking to be admitted before that determination is made. They want a chance to make that determination here. Welcoming an asylum seeker presents a different set of challenges. First of all, they need legal help to prove their case. In Eugene, the Refugee and Immigrant Services Project offers free legal services in our areas. Last year, they served more than 350 people, a lot. Last year, more than 1 million people applied for asylum in the US. There's a gap. The second issue for asylum seekers is they have to wait for 6 months after they file their case to apply for a work permit. So they need to be creative about how to support themselves. Most will need a community willing to share the burden. Hospitality can be expensive. That leaves a broad category of immigrants, people who leave one country to live in another. Lots of immigrants don't fit the legal definition of a refugee, but could still be in danger if they went home, like the Ukrainians hosted by UUCE families who are here on a humanitarian parole program. More than 500,000 Haitians, Nicaraguans, Cubans, and Venezuelans have entered the country this way. We welcome some of these folks on Produce Plus days. So hospitality doesn't need to be complicated either. And finally, just to say it, many immigrants simply want to study, find work that uses their skills or education, reunite with family, lead a better life. How many of us have that in our history? The bottom line is, no matter what immigration status someone has or their reason for coming to the US, they deserve to be protected from racist and xenophobic violence or exploitation. I was going to give you some figures about Oregon, how many people there are here. But mostly what I want to say is that people are still going to continue to come to the U.S. no matter what has happened in our country this week. There are 79 million more people who are not technically refugees, but who've been forced out of their homes by war, natural disaster, climate change, and they have to go somewhere. So if they come here, when they come here, we will be challenged to leave our comfort zones, to bridge gaps of linguistic, cultural, and socioeconomic differences, and to consider what we're prepared to do to stand up for respect and inclusion. So if you're overwhelmed by all these numbers, join the club. In fact, studies show that the best way to build support for refugees is to know one. So you may already know one, but if you don't, one way to start is by attending the Welcome Our New Neighbor event being held right here this Thursday evening from 6 to 8 o'clock. It's a fundraiser for the Refugee and Immigrant Services Program, and UUCE is a co-sponsor. If you want to hear some stories directly from refugees and immigrants in Eugene, if you're willing to help fund the work that helps them, if you'd be willing to help with dishwashing, please see Weekly Connections for more info about the event, or I'd be glad to talk with you afterwards. Thank you so much.
So, thank you, Jean, for extinguishing, while we say our closing words together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, my friends. Go in love and hope and joy.